Hello everyone and welcome to this talk on coexistence with lions and determining the value of a lion. My name is Kim Jacobsen. I'm at Balliol College at the University of Oxford, and my research centers on human-wildlife conflict and coexistence. So what is human-wildlife conflict and coexistence? Well, it's the field of study that concerns itself with whether humans and wildlife are able to live together, because that's always not so easy. An example of this from the UK would be the conflict between farmers and geese. You have flocks of geese migrating through the UK, settling in farmers' fields and eating a lot of the plant that's growing in the fields. So farmers are not always happy about the geese, and sometimes that leads to persecution of the geese. So that's a example of human-wildlife conflict from here in the UK, where I'm sitting at the moment. And these kind of problems exist all over the world. And one of the animals that are frequently involved in conflicts such as this is the lion. Lions are incredible, wonderful, magnificent, beautiful animals, but as you can probably imagine, they aren't such good neighbors. They have a lot of claws and a lot of teeth, so if you have these walking around outside your house, you might feel a bit uncomfortable. So though the lions are one of the most popular species among the worldwide global public, they're actually really difficult to live with for the people who live where they naturally occur, which is largely today in a few African countries. So it's easy to understand why lions might be difficult to live with from the perspective of the farmers and the people who live alongside them. But how about from the conservation angle? Why are we concerned about the fact that people find it hard to live alongside lions? Well, if it's hard to live alongside lions, you might not necessarily be happy to tolerate lions being around, and people might take steps to kill lions or in other ways do things that are inconducive to conservation of lions. And if we look at this map, it gives us a pretty good idea about the extent to which this has already happened across the world. So in this map, you see areas in red. The red areas show the historic distribution of lions. So that means lions used to live there within fairly recent history. And the blue areas of the map show where lions are currently found. And you can see there's been a 90% reduction in the range of lions. And the range of an animal refers to the areas where they live. So only tiny little patches of blue are left on this map, which shows that lions aren't doing so well. I think many people outside of the lion range countries don't really realize this, but lions are in a heavy decline, and this is why lions are of conservation concern, and which is why people do research on how to ensure that lions and people can live together in a reasonable coexistence. Specifically, within the current range where lions are found, my work has been centered in Hwange National Park in Zimbabwe. So you can see Zimbabwe in the map here. It's a landlocked country bordering Botswana, Mozambique, Zambia, and South Africa. And Zimbabwe has done a really good job in keeping some lion populations still present. And Hwange National Park is one of those places. So in Hwange National Park, you have a core protected area where you have wildlife, and all hunting and killing of wildlife is prohibited. But along the borders of that national park, you have lots of little communities where people live off farming and raising livestock. So people live in settlements that typically look like this, like what you see in the picture, and they grow a lot of maize and a lot of pumpkins, as you can see on the picture on the bottom left of your screen. And they raise livestock, so they have cows, goats, chickens, a few pigs and sheep you might also see, and their livestock is really important to them because that's an important source of food and a source of income. So if you really needed money to, say, pay for school fees for one of your children or hospital fees, then you could sell a cow or sell a goat and get some money that way. So when a lion kills people's livestock, they are not only threatening their food supply, but it's like a Zimbabwean colleague of mine used to say, it's like as if someone hacked into your bank account because that herd of cows would be your savings and your emergency funds if you really should ever really need money. So it's a very serious thing for the people who live alongside the national park if they lose any livestock, because they really can't afford to lose any of the livestock they have. So naturally, people are really distressed when lions kill their livestock, and that can lead to strong reactions. If you live in a community right on the border of a national park, you live alongside beautiful wildlife like this, giraffes, zebras, elephants, and lions, and that might seem like a really wonderful thing, but of course, I mean, zebras and giraffes are probably fairly good neighbors, but elephants and lions can cause quite a lot of problems. Elephants raid crops, eat people's maize, and flatten the plants growing in their fields, and lions, like we spoke about, can kill livestock, and in fact they can even sometimes, it's very rare, but it does happen that they also kill people, which is of course extremely tragic. So they are really difficult neighbors. If you live alongside lions, you have to do certain things. You have to build protective enclosures for your livestock, like this goat pen that you see on the left, or the cattle pen that you see on the middle top. So that entails a lot of extra work, and you have to spend time herding your cattle. And the time you spend herding your cattle is time that you can't spend doing other things, like tending your crops or having a job. So even if you don't lose livestock, you still incur a lot of costs from having lions around. And even if you do your very best to try to keep your livestock in enclosures during the night and to herd them and watch over them when they graze outside during the day, sometimes lions will still get a cow. And when that happens, very often the result is this. So this is a scene that I encountered just completely by chance. We were driving along a road on the way to do some interviews, and we saw a group of people standing huddled on the side of the road, and we stopped to check out what was going on. And there were two lions had been shot after they had killed cattle in this area. And that's very often what happens, that people either will legally apply to have a problem animal control license issued, so that the problem animal control people come and legally, that's, it's allowed, kill problem lions that have killed livestock. Or sometimes people take matter in their own hands and go out and set snares or poison bait for lions and kill them that way. So when you have incidents of livestock killing animals, then very often you have lions being killed in return. So this isn't really working out very well for either people or lions. People are losing their livelihoods, lions are losing their lives, and and we care both about the well-being of people and the conservation of lions. So we really want to try to find out information that can help us solve this conflict and help both people and lions live happier lives. So when a person is considering whether they want to go out and kill a lion, they're weighing things up in their mind. They're weighing the reasons in favor of doing so and the reasons against doing so. And the way we can study the balance of the good things and bad things that people perceive as coming along with lions is economic valuation. Because of course, there's no way of inserting a probe into people's brains and measuring their weighing of the good and the bad that they perceive to be associated with lions. That's impossible. So we have to use social science methods such as economic valuation to measure the outcome of that weighing process that people undertake. What's the balance? And when people balance benefits and costs, that refers to anything that increases welfare, and that's the benefits, and anything that decreases welfare, and those are the costs. And the outcome of this balance will influence, it doesn't totally determine people's actions, of course, but it influences whether people decide to go out and kill lions, or if they decide to apply for a problem animal control license to have the lion killed. And benefits can be anything that increases people's welfare. So people might think about the fact that lions in a national park bring in phototourism employment, so that they create some employment in the local area. That lions are part of the cultural heritage of the area. That people get income from being employed in trophy hunting of lions, because that also happens in this area. People can pay to go and hunt lions, and that way some money is generated for communities, plus there's employment for some people who work as part of the trophy hunting businesses. Some people we spoke to also expressed existence value as associated with lions. So what is existence value? Well, that's simply the satisfaction that people gain from knowing that something exists. Even if you don't see it, even though you don't make money for it, you enjoy knowing that it exists. And I think for most of us who live outside of Africa, existence value is the main value that we attach to lions. Even though we've never seen a lion, even though we're never going to go on a safari trip, we would be sad if lions didn't exist out there in the world. So that's existence value. And existence value can also be powerful. Money isn't the only type of value. And economic valuation doesn't just concern itself with financial matters or the balance of money. It's equally about any other type of value, because ultimately economics concerns itself with what people value, and that can be existence value. Nothing to do with dollars and pounds. It's just about people valuing the existence of lions in the world. So lions in this area do bring along some benefits for people, like phototourism, existence value, trophy hunting income, and so on. However, the presence of lions inside the national park also entails costs, because when the lions, go out from the national park, because nothing's stopping them from going out from the national park, and they go out from the national park into surrounding communities, they can cause loss of livestock, they can cause a loss of life. People have to spend time herding their livestock, building fences, and also there's a lot of intangible costs associated with living alongside carnivores. It's not just about the time you have to put in, the equipment you have to, the fences you have to build, and the value of the livestock you lost. There's also stress, fear, and a lot of emotional costs. And when it comes to shaping people's attitude to lions, our research has showed that stress and fear can be just as influential as the loss of livestock, actually more so even. So that people's emotions should not be underestimated when it comes to shaping their attitudes and their actions towards wildlife. So in doing an economic valuation, we want to measure the outcome of this balance of benefits minus costs. So how does this balance work out? Are there more benefits? Are there more costs? Or if the costs outweigh the benefits, to what degree do they outweigh the benefits? Yeah. And how can we measure such a thing? How can we measure all these things that go on inside people's heads? Well, the answer is choice experiments. And this is what a choice experiment looks like. So it's a little bit complicated, so we're going to look at a simplified version first. So, a choice experiment is carried out by showing the participants cards, essentially. This is called a choice card. You could make a literal physical card out of paper, or you can show this on the screen, for example, a tablet. And the participants are the relevant group that you are interested in. So in our case, we went around to the villages on the borders of the national park and had them participate in the choice experiments. So because they are the relevant people, they are the ones who live on the border of the national park, so they are the ones who experience the effects of lions living nearby and occasionally coming into their village areas. So we had tablets, and we showed people these choice cards. Of course, the actual choice cards we showed them didn't have English writing on them. They had writing in the languages of the region, and in this region they spoke 3 languages, so we had to make 3 versions of everything, one in Ndebele language, Tonga, and Nambia languages. So we had 3 different language versions so that everyone could do this in their native language. So we show people this card, and then they are asked to choose between 2 hypothetical scenarios and a status quo. And status quo just means what the situation is currently like. So the status quo option on the far right shows what the current situation is in the area. So currently in the area there are 16 lions, that's the top row, and people don't receive any sort of compensation payment, so that's $0. But then we also show 2 hypothetical new scenarios, option A and option B, and they vary in the number of lions and the amount of compensation payment that would be offered as compensation for having lions around with all the cost that entails, and then people are asked to choose. So when they're choosing between option A, option B, and the status quo option, they have to think about how many lions are there in this option and how much compensation payment am I receiving, and then they have to weigh those 2 together. And I'm sure lots of you are probably starting to clock on how this works as a form of economic valuation about now. So we see how much the number of lions weighs relative to the amount of money. And then we can see, well, how much lions are people willing to accept for X amount of additional dollars? And if we can find that tipping point, we know exactly how much a lion is worth for a local person in dollar terms. And when I say how much a lion is worth, that value can also be negative. If you're valuing something where the costs outweigh the benefits, then you will have a net negative value. And we knew that lions cause a lot more problems in this area, unfortunately, than they provide benefits. So we knew that this was going to be a net negative value, that we expected to get negative value per lion. So imagine that you are a farmer in Zimbabwe, and you are presented with option A, option B, and the status quo in this instance. Option A has 10 lions, and you get $50 annually in compensation for living alongside lions and tolerating all the various costs that they impose on you. In option B, there are more lions, there are 30 lions, but you also receive a lot more money. You receive $300 annually as a compensation payment. And then there's a status quo option, which there are 16 lions, which is more than in option A, but less than in option B, but you receive $0. I want everyone to take a moment, look at this choice scenario, and think, what would you choose? So I'm just going to give you all a moment to have a think. You're a Zimbabwean farmer. What would be your choice? And it's always really interesting to do this with a group because you see a lot of different answers coming through. Some people say I would choose option A because it has less lions, even though I also get less money. Other people say I would choose option B because there's more lions, but there's also a lot more money. And having 20 extra lions for me, it's worth it if I get $250 more. So then the people who choose to have 30 lions instead of 10 or instead of 16, and that because they get $300, we can see that each additional lion for them is worth it causes less costs than having $300. So in a simplified version of doing this, if you divide 30 by 300, you get a rough sense of how much a lion is causing them harm. That means that having 30 lions causes them less harm than they feel they get benefits from $300. Does that make sense? I think it does. Yeah. However, this is a super simplified scenario. We also included some other things than just lions and money, because in this area, my research organization, Wild Crew, which is in Department of Zoology at Oxford, are also running two conservation programs. They're called conflict mitigation schemes. So the first one is the mobile bomas. A boma just refers to a cattle enclosure, and these are very effective. So they keep lions out. No lions has ever gotten through one of these mobile bomas, these movable fences, and people can move them around. So they can put them wherever it's convenient for them and wherever the cattle are. So they are very effective at excluding lions, and people really like having these. We also run a Lion Guardian program, which consists of local people in the villages who are trained to chase lions away from the village area and back into the national park. So that's really, really great because that keeps people in the villages safe, it keeps livestock safe, and it keeps lions safe because they chase away from the villages where they're in danger and back into the national park where they're safe. So that's really a win-win, and people really like the Lion Guardians too. So we can incorporate the mobile bomas and the lion guardians as additional layers in the choice experiment to see how much people value the lion guardians and mobile bomas too. So now people have to trade off multiple things at the same time. They have to think, oh, how much is having $300 versus 0 versus 50 worth to me versus having guardians, not having guardians, having bomas, not having bomas, having more or less lions. So if you take a moment now to make a decision again with the extra two layers incorporated into the choice experiment, the bomas and the guardians, and which one would you choose now? This is a bit more difficult, isn't it? Because now you have to think, well, option B has more lions, but I get a mobile boma, which is really good at keeping lions out. But I don't have lion guardians, which I also really want. But I get $300 more than I get in the status quo, $250 more than I get in option A. Suddenly, you have to make really difficult trade-offs. And by asking people to make these trade-offs, we see exactly how much money they're willing to forego in order to have bomas, in order to have guardians, in order to have less lions. And that gives us, when we do this repeatedly with different amounts of money, then we see exactly where this tipping point is. Where do people start choosing more lions? Where do people start choosing giving up bomas and guardians in order to have more money? And then we see how much money people actually are willing to give up to have less lions, to have bomas, and to have lion guardians. And that's how economic valuation works. It's a little bit complicated perhaps, but all you really have to understand is by making these choices that involve money and giving up money to have more or less of something good or bad, we can see exactly how much money these things that people have to give up is worth to them. And then we input the results from all these choice experiments that we have lots of people do. We had 1,500 people doing these choice experiments. So by having lots and lots of people doing this many, many times, we get a really good estimate of where this trade-off value is. And then we do some statistics on it don't worry how that works. You don't have to know that for today. There are statistical models that you can use that calculate for you where this trade-off is. And based on those statistical models, we found that the value of a lion was negative $180 per person per year. That means that a person in this area would be willing to would choose the option with 180 less dollars if that also meant they would have one less lions. However, if you offer people more than $180 per year, they will choose the option with an additional lion. This shows us that the total harms, the extra work that people have to put into protecting their livestock, the extra herding, the extra fencing materials, the loss of livestock, and the fear and the stress, all of that to people added up is less than the benefit of having $180 more. So if you would offer a person $180 per year in compensation, they will accept an additional lion. Of course, this is simplified. Like all statistical models and all social science experiments are simplified versions of reality. Of course, there's lots of other stuff going on in society with societal norms, peer pressure, laws, regulations, and lots of other things that influence exactly what people would actually choose. But it gives us a good idea on a fundamental level. A lion causes people harm to the equivalent of having $180 less. And that's quite a lot. I mean, $180 per year might not sound that much, but you need to put it in context. The average salary in Zimbabwe is only $250 per month. So they would be they'd be willing to give up a fairly substantial chunk of money relative to how much they actually have in order to have one lion less. So lions are causing a significant amount of harm to people in this area. And that's something that we as conservationists have to think about. How can we reduce that harm, and how can we offset that harm with creating other benefits in terms of perhaps employment or other ways of transferring benefits from the presence of lions to people, so we can offset the harm that they experience. And as a global public, for you and me, sitting in the UK or wherever you're sitting in the world, even if you're living 1,000 miles from the closest lion, if you value lions, if you have existence value from lions, then we should think about how to provide benefits for the people who bear the costs. And currently, the only people who bear the cost of lion presence are the people who live alongside them and have to put up with losing livestock and living with fear. So as the global public, we need to think about how do we transfer benefits to the farmers of Zimbabwe and the other African countries where lions exist. And how should we do this? And that's a big challenge that we all need to think about. And if people don't receive benefits from having lions around, they're not going to be happy to have lions around. And if people are not happy to have lions around, they're going to do things that are the counteract conservation efforts. And then lions might not make it in the long term. So the final conclusion of our work in Zimbabwe was that the total cost experienced by local communities is large, and it's definitely larger than if you just calculate the market value of the cows they lose, because the market value of a few livestock in this entire area is not that large on a per capita basis, on a per person basis. But if you add up all the other costs, the fear, the stress, the herding, the building of fences, the cost that people experience are much larger. It's not just about how much the cow that got eaten cost you to buy. It's also about all these other costs that you experience. The title of the paper is here at the bottom of the slide. If you want to look it up, just go to Google Scholar. If you're not familiar with Google Scholar, it's a really brilliant search engine for finding scientific papers. So I highly encourage that you guys have a look at that. Just search the title in Google Scholar and it's going to come right up. And then you can read more about this other work that we've done in the area. Lions are beautiful, they're wonderful, they're majestic, they're inspiring, but they're also really difficult to live with. So I guess the takeaway message I would like everyone to think about is how do we make it easier for the people of Zimbabwe and other African countries to live with lions and other wildlife that can pose a lot of costs to them.